Since no one else is willing to say it, I'll say it. Andor is genuinely so good, I'm willing to forgive Disney for the sequels. Yeah, you want to know what my favorite thing about Andor is? When you look at the sequels, why does everyone hate it? There's one main reason. Obviously, there's the terrible writing. Oh, somehow Palpatine returned. Shut up. But you know what people really hate about the sequels? It's that not only does it not add anything of value to the Star Wars lore, it actually ruins the prequels and the originals. Because when you look at Anakin, and I know this has nothing to do with Andor, I'll get there. When you look at Anakin, he was the chosen one, right? Anakin was the chosen one. He was supposed to bring balance to the Force, and he did that by killing Palpatine in Episode 6. When you bring back Palpatine in Episode 9, essentially that undoes all of it, ruins the prequels, ruins the originals, ruins Anakin as the chosen one. Now let's get to Andor. Why is Andor so great? I'll tell you. You know, it's almost the opposite of the sequels. The sequels ruined the originals and the prequels, which I just went over. Andor does the opposite. It adds so much to the originals, and not really the prequels. It adds so much to the originals. It makes them so much better as films. It makes you so much more invested, especially in Rogue One. But Rogue One leads into A New Hope, which is the originals, right? Because I'll give you an example. When I'm watching Andor, I'm watching 2 seasons about Cassian Andor. Obviously, I'm invested in him. So then when we watch Rogue One and we see Andor and the Rogue One team, Jyn Erso and K2SO, Melshi and all of them, they get the plans for the Death Star and they give it to Leia in A New Hope. Then all of a sudden we're invested in Leia and that whole, Leia, Luke, Han, Chewbacca, 3PO, R2 team. Because it's passing on the will of the rebellion. And it's passing on that whole fight. And now when you watch the ending of Episode 6 and you're watching, Luke, I'll pretend this is like the tree. And he's like here and he's like looking at the Force Ghost or whatever. And the music is playing. When you just watch the originals without watching Andor, it's like, nice, Luke and his team finally won. But now after watching Andor, and you're seeing Luke there against a tree, and he's all happy, and everyone's celebrating on Andor, now it means so much more. Because now you're thinking about, okay, the rebellion won. Everything Luthen did for the rebellion, everything Andor did, everything Clea did, everything Bix did for the rebellion, it was all worth it. And that adds so much more to the victory than just Luke and his team, than just Anakin. Now it's the entire rebellion. And Andor added all that. So that's why I really love Andor. And, another reason is you can just watch it as a show. With, if, for example, I wanted to say to a friend, my friend says, I want to watch a new show. Can you give me a recommendation? And I would say, for example, let's say this is 2022. I'd say, yeah, you should watch The Mandalorian. And he'd be like, oh, no, I'm not really into Star Wars and all that. He'd be like, oh, well, okay, because Mandalorian is very Star Warsy, right? But Andor, the beauty of it is it's an amazing show. The characters, the depth, the writing, the complexity. You can watch it as a show and still be blown away without having, being a huge Star Wars fan, being really invested in Star Wars, really knowing who the characters are in the originals, the prequels. You don't really need to know all that for Andor. You can watch it as a show and become invested in Andor, Luthen, the fight against the Empire just by watching Andor. That's how good of a show it is, Andor, you watch him really progress as a character. He goes from someone that in Episode 1 was not invested in the rebellion at all. It was more Marva's thing at that point. He just wanted to survive, find his sister, whatever, take care of Marva. And then you get to the end of Season 2, and he's doing everything he can for the rebellion. He's, meeting with rebellion leaders, saving Clea, who has all the information about the Death Star. Without Andor, without Clea, without Luthen, the Death Star never would have been destroyed. The Empire would have been impossible. That's why, it's such a well-written show. It gets you invested because you understand the stakes. The Empire's presence is felt in every moment with Krennic and Dedra Meero and, Young and all that. It's, you really feel how dangerous the Empire is. And obviously the biggest moment that, you really understand the Empire's evil in this show. There's many moments, but the biggest was obviously the massacre in Gorman, where they're killing all these innocent people who were just fighting for their rights as citizens of Gorman, right? And there it is again. Now you're watching the originals and you're like, wow, the Empire is really, really bad. And especially that scene with Bix. I'm not going to say it because this is YouTube, but you know what I'm talking about. So it's really, the Empire is more than a threat. It's like an iron fist, you know, trying to take control of all of, you know, the Star Wars universe. And it's Andor and the rebellion that are fighting against it. So you can't not be invested, Star Wars fan or otherwise, right? So now the second part of the title of this video, where does Star Wars go from here? Now, I hope Star Wars doesn't get the wrong idea. And, you know, they'll see that Andor is so successful with critics and audiences. They don't be like, oh, we need to make an Andor Season 3 or we need to make a Jyn Erso movie. That's not what Star Wars should take away. What Star Wars should take away is we want two things from future Star Wars projects. Number one, Star Wars has an insane amount of lore they can tap into at all times, you know? Original era, prequel era, sequel era, even though I don't really want to get into that. They could, with like The Mandalorian. They have the New Republic, the Old Republic. They have so much they can tap into. So that's one thing. That's number one. We want them to tap into the massive amount of lore that they have to create an interesting story. And two, the biggest reason Andor was successful was the writers, the team, and that, you know, the story that the team created was something that's so special. You know, Andor's fight against the Empire is special, and it's not because of Andor. It's not because of the, you know, the original era. It's about, you know, the writers, the story they created. So we need, you know, amazing stories with writers that really care about the stuff that they're writing, like they did in Andor. It can be, it doesn't have to be super serious, you know. The originals were not these super dark, gritty films, so, you know, spy thrillers like Andor is. No, you just need good writers who care about whatever project they're doing. It hasn't seemed that way with, you know, the Book of Boba Fett, where they kind of made a joke of Boba Fett, who fans were, you know, really invested in. Obi-Wan, where they added nothing. It needs to be, you know, about something important in Star Wars. It needs to be well written. That's how you make a good Star Wars project. Now it seems like the stuff that's coming out soon, Darth Maul, Shadow Lord, that sounds really cool. Darth Maul is a character that fans love, but there needs to be amazing writers behind it. Starfighter, you know, the movie that's coming out with Ryan Gosling and Sean Levy. You know, Sean is an amazing director. Ryan Gosling is a great actor, so that can be amazing. Again, the writers. So that's where Star Wars goes from here. Well-written projects that, you know, craft an interesting story. That's all for this video. I'll catch you later.